Hello guys, so Cursor are changing pricing again. And yes, again it's getting more expensive in a new way. And in this video I will explain the change of the pricing related to auto mode with LLMs. And also I will dive into the history of their price changes and explain why are they doing that, which is a sign of fundamental issue in their business model, but not only for Cursor, but for most of AI agents and editors. But before we dive into that history, let's explain what that updates to teams and auto actually means. There are actually two updates, one for the team plan and the second one is much more important, auto for individuals. So basically when you're prompting Cursor, you may choose the model or choose auto, which basically means that Cursor chooses the model for you. But it's not clear. The criteria is that it's best model for them, for their pricing and optimization, or for you, for your particular prompt. But the thing is that auto used to be free for all pro plans, and it used to be kind of the fallback value if you don't want to pay or if you ran out of paid credits on your plans. So yeah, not anymore. After September 15th, auto mode will cost at what they call competitive token rates. And it doesn't even matter that much what those rates are. We can take a look at them actually. So these are the prices, but basically the main point is that it's not free anymore. Although just 23 days ago, Dan Perks from Cursor explained the previous price change that auto remains free of charge for users on all paid plans. So yeah, that didn't age well, just 23 days. But this is just the last point of sequence of pricing changes, which we can trace back to the very first pricing. So as you can see here, remember, if you are on Cursor for a longer time, there used to be 500 requests per month on $20 per month plan, which I started with back in spring or winter 2025, which was more than enough for most developers. But at the same time, some people started abusing those 500 requests because one request may contain a lot of things. Multiple features to build, multiple bugs to fix, multiple pages to create and stuff like that. So this is where Cursor started losing money very quickly. At the same time, they become the quickest growing startup in history. 100 million annual revenue was reached in 12 months. So this is the growth compared to other popular startups and businesses, which is crazy. So that was in February of this year, so 6 months ago. And then in June, 2 months ago, they reached 500 million annual recurring revenue, which is again the fastest in history, but actually Anthropic is pretty close. And we will talk about Anthropic and Claude Code just a minute, but just look at the trajectory and compare those two. This is a visual representation of what level of threat is Anthropic to Cursor. So as much as Cursor were growing, they were also paying a lot to the model creators with the API. I'm not sure what were the deals until they realized they need to change pricing and try to earn money, not just lose money. And after a few price changes like removing 500 requests and stuff like that, in June they introduced so-called Ultra plan for $200 per month with 20 times more usage. And I think their expectation and their bet was on the fact that many people would not use the full 200 per month quota, so they would earn more money from that. And that also didn't end up well. People were angry from the Pro plan that they introduced more limitations, so they had to clarify the pricing a few weeks afterwards, which is when exactly auto became kind of a fallback thing because it said unlimited usage. And then they started charging pretty much all the plans at API pricing or roughly at the same rate. So then on the Cursor dashboard, they introduced the summary table, which is a great UX decision. At least it was clear what people are paying for. So now currently it says $11 for my API cost for Claude 4 Sonnet, and I'm still within the $20 plan that I have. But last month when I ran out of credits, see the prices. So those were the actual prices I paid for each prompt for the same Claude 4 Sonnet, which varies from like 7 cents to almost $1, which is roughly in the same ballpark as I would pay directly to Claude API. And this happened to many more people, which made Cursor actually much more expensive than just a few months ago. And this is where it leads us to today's updates, or actually another price increase or limitation. And another apology incoming maybe, but actually on the same forum we can read what Dan says, clarifying the things a little bit, but actually it didn't really change much. The same vague political explanations like we have to make these changes to ensure our pricing remains flexible. Basically, they're covering their own business model by restricting usage for users and raising the prices. Yes, they at least made it more transparent with the dashboard and more numbers compared to other AI agents and IDEs which don't even show the numbers. But still, the current new Cursor pricing model is a huge issue. Even on their own forum, one of the most discussed issues are how they cap auto, Cursor is expensive, update to teams, and if you were in charge of pricing, what would you do? And what Dan is trying to reply on the forum, basically the official explanation is pretty logical and understandable. As models have improved, they have gotten better at reading more and writing more of your code, which basically means it became more expensive for Cursor to use LLMs. I think the main model which everyone uses now, Claude 4 Sonnet, is expensive enough for Cursor, which actually changed the trajectory of losing money even more, in my opinion. And then another problem appeared on the stage for Cursor on May 22nd. Claude Code was officially released and made it even worse that in June it made it accessible on Pro and Max plans, which is exactly what I'm using for Anthropic. I am on Pro plan for $17 per month with access to Claude AI on the web and Claude Code Sonnet 4 with limited usage of 5-hour window it is called, but still it feels like, I don't have the numbers, but it feels like much more usage versus Cursor. So it's a no-brainer pricing then. So now Cursor are actually fighting two business battles against Claude Code and against their own popularity of how many people are using Cursor with Claude models. Even with those business problems, they still need to run quick, release new features, which they are doing a lot. If you look at their Twitter account, there are a lot of announcements. So Cursor is trying to go Claude Code with the terminal, then they have GPT-5 release, then they have Cursor 1.4 with improvements, background agents, Claude Opus 4.1. So they are quick at releasing new stuff, so 1.3 and other features. But then majority of the replies on those releases are about pricing. So how people burned a lot of their credits. This is an example from Ultra Plan. Then another reply, all is good except for pricing. And even this comment is hilarious and on point. When Claude Opus 4.1 was released in Cursor, August commented, enjoy your 1 request per month, guys. This is how it would roughly price Opus on, for example, Pro plan of Cursor. You totally can burn $20 in one prompt with Claude Opus. But to be honest, it's not just Cursor. The problem is deeper. Cursor rely on LLM providers like Anthropic with Claude, and then Anthropic relies on basically hardware cost for LLMs to run. So in both cases, when people are asking Cursor to fix their pricing, there's not really much to fix. It's just that expensive. And a month ago, the article was released by Edward, Anthropic is bleeding out, which is a very long article, and I will link that in the description below. But basically, it's saying that Anthropic began to raise prices for their API users like Cursor. Because, well, for Anthropic, it became quite expensive to run those models. So I think all in all, we're kind of ending the era of cheap AI and reliable AI. If you want to use AI for something more serious, I think you should be prepared to either pay more or optimize your workflow in a way to use less of AI agents and models. Or, for example, optimize context to use fewer tokens. But the final thought, back to Cursor, is it kind of over for them? So it's downhill from here? Because people seem to run away from Cursor to Claude Code massively? Well, not necessarily. Cursor is still the best, by far the best IDE at auto-completing the code. People are stating that on all social media, so this is their advantage. And also I've made a poll on my Twitter and LinkedIn. What do people use? And Claude Code is the leader, but Cursor is still widely adopted, widely used, and it's still in the game. And here's the same poll on LinkedIn. Here Cursor is even in the lead, of course with only 300 votes, but it's still something. Cursor is not dying yet, but the trajectory is not looking good. So if I were you, I would not sign for yearly pricing of Cursor, because it may change drastically in just a few months. And on this channel, I will try to update the news with the pricing changes, so subscribe and we will keep getting back to this question, which is the best IDE and AI agent for value for money, so to speak, on a specific month or even week. It may change that fast. So what do you think of the future and the present of Cursor? Are you still a user? And if you are you planning to switch? Let's discuss all of that in the comments below. That's it for this time, and see you guys in other videos.